Welcome to the latest episode 5 on the floor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. $2.99 per month. Bypass the Apple upcharge. Click on the link. Pay. You can cancel at any time. Get access to 10 different channels, including our draft and transaction channels and our stage shows. It's the place for the most heat anywhere. It's Off the Floor. Also, Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Legal in the state of Florida again. You put down $5, you play it, you get 50 to play right away. Daily Fantasy Simplified. Play the NBA Finals as long as they last, although not going to last a whole lot longer. It doesn't seem Stanley Cup Finals are over, but you still got MLB and much more on there, and get ready for football season. PrizePicks.com. Use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Mercy. Luxurious Heat Nation. Yeah. Mercy and Lago. Down to Biscayne. Yay. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan, or Kevin Durant. Well, loosely tied to Kevin Durant. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. Got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. I would tell you to follow all the episodes in our library, but I don't remember any of them. So just go check it out. And there's a lot of stuff with a lot of different hosts, and I tend to be on all of them. But they're not all about Kevin Durant. Not all of them, but most of them are kind of trending that direction. What Brady and I are going to do today is we're going to rate the Heat's assets. We're going to do this 2 different ways. We're going to rate them in terms of what the Heat should value them as for them, and then what, say, the Phoenix Suns might value them at, as we try to figure out what a possible package that would actually get the Suns to bite would be for Durant, as there's a lot of noise. So the latest noise is that, and I think this was from Sam Amick, who someone I greatly respect. He reported in The Athletic, or on Twitter, but for The Athletic, that the Suns are prepared to kind of just send Durant wherever the heck they want to send him. That this whole the idea that they were going to work with him, apparently they just don't like, or at least they're acting like they don't like, any of the offers that have been put out there by the teams that Durant might want to go to. Of course, the counter argument to all of this is that if Durant doesn't want to go to a place and they send him there, he may not be happy. He might not sign an extension. And so you would think that those teams would offer less for what could be an unhappy rental. Although some teams may just bank on him being another, Kawhi, where they won 1 championship and then Kawhi ended up leaving, but Toronto would do that again. And apparently they're willing to do it again because they're willing to do it right now, according to a lot of the reports. But let's look at some of the Heat's assets that could be in this trade. So let's talk about everything that's been talked about. And I want to be clear on this before the aggregators start circling. I'm not saying that these are the offers. I'm simply saying these are pieces that could be part of an offer. I have a general idea of what the parameters of the Heat's likely offer would be. But again, I'm not saying that all of this would be given together. So I'm going to give you the options here, and you're going to rank them, okay? And then I'm going to rank them with you. So we know that to make a deal work for Durant, they likely would have to include Andrew Wiggins' contract. Now, Andrew Wiggins has 2 years left on his deal, making roughly $30 million. So let's put him in the basket here. You've got Duncan Robinson, who's entering the last year of his deal, and there's a partial guarantee in there, an early termination, which could, for the Suns, alleviate some of their tax burden. It's the kind of contract that nobody else really has. Question is how much that matters to the Suns. We have the number 20 overall pick in the current draft, which is not the Heat's pick, but is Golden State's pick. We have future first, and I'm going to look at this again because I should have looked at this beforehand, but the Heat's future draft picks, let's look at it, what they can actually offer. There's not a whole lot here, by the way. Second round picks don't really exist. But you take a look at 2026, they own their pick, right? They own their pick 27. They have a second round pick with no protections on it. 28, they have, oh, by the way, 26, they have Memphis actually. Is that Memphis that has their pick? I believe it is. Okay. 28, they own their pick. 29, they own their pick. 30, they own their pick. 31, they own their pick. Okay, so we're talking about a future pick, perhaps let's say 2029 first round pick, just for argument's sake. You additionally have the contract of Terry Rozier, which is the last year of his deal. He's not earning those extra incentives, so the deal goes down by about $1.7 million. So we're at the 24 range or something along those lines, $24 million. So that's one thing. And then you have Kel'el Ware on a rookie contract, recently in the 15th pick in the draft. Niko Jovic, who is due a possible extension, 27th pick in the draft a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago. Jaime Jaquez, who was first team all rookie, who's still on a rookie deal, but had a subpar second season. And I guess we could throw in Pelle Larsson, who was a second round pick this past year. Let's look at them from the Heat's perspective. Which assets, and I'm not, for those who are saying, why aren't you throwing Tyler in there? It's because Tyler is not an option for this particular trade. Okay. So we're not going to put him in there. And I know there are some who'll tune this episode out because if we don't trade Tyler in every episode, they tune us out. But Brady, you rank them according to the Heat's perspective.
So, yeah, this is where it gets interesting. From the Heat's perspective, I would say I think I know where the top three probably is. I think Ware is probably close to one. And it's the only tough part of it is I think they really do value that future first, the 2026 first rounder. Those are kind of up the top for me. I just feel like that's the type they're valuing. You talk about them not owning their pick this year. I think they look at where this team is and where they're heading and kind of the idea of where they're like, they have to build through the draft. Number one, it's like I keep saying on these episodes, it's been their best work in creating a lot of the builds of these Heat teams has been through the draft. And if you're kind of planning for possible, the issue is like their future first, we know where it's going to land, right? Like it's not like you're in a situation where you want to keep your first because you're going to be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference so you can get a top pick. It's ultimately not going to happen. As whatever you feel about this team and this roster, and you look at the Eastern Conference, they're not going to be very low behind most of these teams. So there's that part of it. I look at it. So I'd say Ware in the future 2026 first rounder kind of up at the top as the top two.
Okay.
The thing where it gets interesting is I think Jovic is 3, just off the top of my head. I don't know if this is bad or not, but I don't value the 20th pick in this draft as highly as maybe some may think. Like, I've gone through some of the options of like different guys they can go after and things. I think they could get a steal, but like when you talk about an asset for themselves, yes, I think they can get a good player. Like they've done it. We've seen what they've done in the past years, but like talking about the asset itself, it's not higher than I'm not projecting that the player that they take at 20 is going to be better than what they got from Kel'el in his opening year and in the potential of what Kel'el Ware is. So I'm not going to put him that higher than Kel'el. Same goes for honestly Jovic. I think Jovic has kind of shown his potential, and we'll see what the player ends up becoming, or maybe they don't have the pick before they even can make a choice. But I'd say that is probably 4th. And maybe I'm not giving Duncan's contract enough credit. That might be higher now that I'm thinking about it, because I think that expiring. Oh, wait, but that's honestly for the later round. That's for when I'm talking about for other teams. For Miami, it's probably not as high. That's kind of an asset for them to actually use right now to funnel something. So I'll save that for later. But I'd say from Miami's perspective, I'd say it's kind of in that order. And then, I mean, Terry at the bottom, Wiggins I don't think – like he's a fine player for them if he wants to come back and he could be productive, but he's not very high on their asset list, in my opinion. And I guess the only player I didn't mention is Jaquez, and I'd probably say he's around that middle range. I'd probably around 5 behind Jovic and Ware, and probably behind the 2 picks.
Okay, so you have it. So just to recap here, you have Ware first or second? First?
I'd say first.
Okay, then you have the 2020, and again, I shouldn't have mentioned they have the 27 pick. They don't. That pick goes to Charlotte. Mm-hmm. That was for Rozier. So we're saying let's say the 29 first round pick, Jovic, 20th pick this year. Then you're saying maybe Jaquez, then Duncan, Wiggins, and Rozier. There's only like one second round pick in here, right? Like this is most of their second round picks are going out. Their second round pick 2028 is going out, 27 is going out, 29 is going out, 30 is going out. They've got a swap with 31. They own their own in, let's see what it is. They do own one in 20. Hold on a second. 28. They have their own first. They don't have a second. 29. They're on first. Don't have a second. So there's just not a lot of second round currency to use. And then the swaps too. Like you could trade swaps. I don't really understand. I've said this before in podcasts. I don't really understand why teams value these swaps so much, because a lot of times it doesn't even turn out to vest, because sometimes the teams don't end up in the position that you're expecting them to be. But anyway, all right. So let me go through this list here. And again, this is different from how Phoenix might value them. And I think that's a good point that you made regarding Duncan. It's not that the Heat don't value Duncan Robinson, but he's in the last year of his deal. Now they need shooting. So I think he's a player they would still like to keep. He's obviously the leading three-point shooter in their history. They would like to keep him, but, again, the odds of him staying beyond next season, probably not that great anyway. And this contract he signed does allow for a little bit of flexibility here, which, again, sort of converts into an asset for a team that might need that relief. But I'm with you that you can't really include him high on this list. I think for the Heat, I would argue, and this is not on the Sun side, I would argue that this pick coming up potentially has more value than the 29, say, first-round pick, unless you believe that your organization's going to stay in mediocrity or go under it. In which case, because that pick, obviously, right now, it's your pick, so you don't have to worry about protections on it. But they're always about now. And when you can get a player now, as opposed to waiting for someone who currently, I guess, would be, in ninth grade.
Wait, are we saying the 2029 pick or the 2026 pick?
No, well, 26, hold on a second. I was thinking more around when I was like 29. That's sort of what's been discussed.
I'm more so talking because they have their own pick in 2026 first rounder, right?
Can they move 26? Because they've already trading 27. So the step-in rule, right? They don't have 27. So that's why I was looking ahead to 2020. Okay. That's why I was looking ahead to 29. So I was saying, if you're looking at the 29 pick and you're looking at the 25 pick, which is 20, which is not their own pick, it's the Golden State pick, I would say for your own team, the ability to get a player in your system right now is preferable. Now, I guess the question on the 20th pick this year or where depends on what they think of where. Right? They picked Ware 15th. This is a deeper draft, supposedly. So you could say that the 20th pick of this draft might end up being a better player than the player that you took at 15, except that you've seen the player that you took at 15 and you seem to like him and see a role for him going forward. But conventional wisdom is that the pick depreciates as soon as you take the player. It's like when you take a car off the lot. So that could really be argued either way, but I think it does depend on what you think of Kel'el Ware's rookie season, and especially what it projects with this team. And if you like him and you think that that's a player and the type of player they haven't had in a while, I understand putting him ahead of some future pick. Now, he's, of course, 1 year closer to an extension than whoever the 20th pick would be this year. So one year closer to having to get paid, you maybe weigh that. But you are clear on the fact that you would have Ware ahead of Jovic. Now, is that simply because you see Ware's potential is higher and the fit and the need on this team to be greater? Or is it also because Jovic is due the extension quicker?
It's definitely both. It's funny that there's somebody we're talking about that's younger than Jovic. Because Jovic was always the young guy in this asset pool. But yeah, it's part of that and the contract thing, but it's also, I think it is the potential. And I'm a big Jovic guy. I like the potential of what they can do if he stays healthy, of the things that he could do within the offense and everything along those lines. But they've kind of mapped out a program here behind Bam and Ware in this front court. Jovic has been noted as one of their core role players in general, but Ware's kind of been given this crown of being next to Bam and kind of taking that reign. And I also think about it in this context, Ethan, when I've heard, when Heat fans talk about the trade, I've heard them say, okay, you don't need to give up Kel'el Ware. I haven't heard many people say we have to keep pick 20 out of it. So that part of it as well almost makes me
But
pretty
that is
strongly.
because I'm with you, and that is see, I don't think teams value it that way necessarily all the time, but I do think fans value it that way because they get attached to the player. Because you don't know who they're going to pick at 20, and you don't know if they're going to pick the guy that you want them to pick at 20, right? So it's like you've seen where maybe you haven't bought his jersey yet, but you like a lot of the things that he's done. You don't, and there's this feeling among fans that you don't want to see a guy who was on your roster end up succeeding somewhere else. Like that's a terrible feeling. And I think psychologically that's why it's but here's the other part. I've seen people say this on Twitter, and I think it's a good counter argument. If you were just to say last year, okay, we can get Kevin Durant, we got to include this 15th pick, most Heat fans would have said fine. It's now that they've seen who the 15th pick is and that the Heat apparently did not botch the pick, right? We think he's going to be a good player. You can't know for sure, but the rookie season was promising. That now it's like, okay, well, now you can't trade the guy because we like him. And this sometimes, not only does this affect fans, sometimes it affects organizations where they get attached to their own guys. And we've seen the Heat do that at times as well. But I think generally, and we're going to flip to the Phoenix side of this after the break here, I'm generally with you on this. I just think that the 20th pick, I don't know if they really like someone who's going to be down there. They clearly want to compete. And to make the argument that you're going to compete, do you really want to break in another rookie anyway? I mean, they've done this now in one degree or another with Hawkins, with Ware, and with Jovic over the past 3 years. I said this on floor. They have only once drafted a player in the first round 4 straight years under Riley. Only once. They did it in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005. Wayne Simeon was the last one, so it would have been Karan, Dwayne, Durrell, and Wayne Simeon. Well, obviously, Karan worked out. Dwayne kind of worked out. And then you've got Durrell, who was sort of the wrong pick for that time because they didn't know they were getting Shaq at that time, so they were staying young. They should have taken Jameer Nelson. And then 2005, Simeon didn't work out. He's a preacher now. But like they've only done this once under Pat, and actually only twice in the history of the organization, which even predates Pat. So my inclination, and I hate to say this to our guy Digital Adele, is that they're going to move the pick. I still think they're going to move the pick, and for Durant or not for Durant, I still think the pick's probably going somewhere. But again, I understand why you're putting this stuff the way you are. And so we'll talk about the Phoenix side of this on the other side, because I think it's a little bit different for them, and that may be why there's a little bit of trouble kind of coming to a middle ground on this. There's no middle ground though when it comes to sending money. You got to use Cash App. Making money moves should be easy. That's why our entire team at 5 on the floor has Cash App. It's fast, safe, and way more personalized than the other apps out there. No extra hoops to jump through, no extra stress. All the tools right there to help you cash in. Plus, it actually feels safe. Cash App looks out for you. Something seems sketchy. You might be sending money to a potential scammer. They'll warn you and make you think twice before you hit send. You can spice up your payments with custom text, stamps, and backgrounds. Lots of stuff you can do on there. And if for whatever insane reason you don't already have Cash App, like we all do here at 5 on the floor, just download it from your phone's app store, sign up, enter our code on the floor in your profile, send $5 to a friend. You get $10 just for getting started. For limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, there's no catch. Just download Cash App and sign up. Use our exclusive referral code on the floor in your profile. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days. You get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Okay, let's look at this on the Phoenix side, because we're hearing about all these possible offers and Houston maybe trying to send out Jabari Smith. Well, they don't really want to send out Jabari Smith, but they want to send out Jalen Green, it seems like. Doesn't seem like, at least according to reports, and I say reports because they're all over the place, the Phoenix is really interested in Jalen Green. Then San Antonio doesn't seem that they want to move Castle. They don't want to move the number 2 overall pick. They have the 14th pick. They could trade Devin Vassell, but doesn't seem like they're all that interested. Those are 2 of the teams that apparently Durant would be pretty happy going to. Then there's the Knicks, who aren't interested really in doing this at all. Then there's Minnesota, which is interested but doesn't want to move Jaden McDaniels. That has Nasri as a free agent. Could move Gobert. I still don't understand what Phoenix would want with him, but apparently they're attracted to bring in him or Randall. But the problem is, it doesn't seem like KD wants to play there, which means he won't re-sign there, which means you're getting a rental. And I mentioned Toronto, which could trade some combination of Quickly or Barrett plus the center, Haka I can never pronounce his name. Sorry. Do it for me.
Hurdle.
Thank you. I don't know why that's so hard for me. And the 9 pick, which is the highest pick other than what San Antonio could offer, that's really been talked about here. So a lot of this is if another team just swoops in or ups its offer and just sort of leaves Miami in the dust with what Miami could offer right now. But I guess I wanted to go through this and quickly sort of rank how you would see Phoenix seeing these assets, because I think it's different than people would think. And I actually think, and tell me if I'm crazy on this, I actually think that if they're simply trying to get tax savings, Duncan's contract is the one thing that none of these other teams can offer, right? Like that is, to me, that would be the tiebreaker here. But I just don't know that Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Phoenix Suns, cares about that much.
It's definitely up there. Like when I was looking at the assets from Phoenix, that's why I brought them up earlier. It's probably top 3, honestly. Just thinking about the different guys. Like when you brought up earlier about Ware versus the pick 20, like from Heat's perspective, to me, I don't really think it's close. I think I know people have been saying like, is there like an overrated sense to the Ware asset right now because of like what we just seen and impacting the game, like meaningful games, all that stuff. With all that said, I still think from Miami's perspective, you value Ware much more than you value pick 20. With that said, the question becomes to me, what would Phoenix value? Because as you mentioned, all the points you were making, from that perspective, you almost want the guy that you can make the choice, that you can make the pick and all that stuff. But the reason why I'm almost a little bit hesitant to say that fully is because like Ware was national this season. This isn't Jovic's rookie season. This isn't Haka's rookie season. I'm not just saying because Haka's had a good rookie year as well. But they had moments, but it wasn't like national exposure where they were like getting put on all these different things and getting hyped up. And I saw like there was a lot of teams that were like really high on Ware. Like either it was media people from other teams or if it was players talking about him after games, like they're like, oh, that guy's good. Like that guy, like just seeing the stuff he was able to do. So that's the reason why I still think it's close from Phoenix perspective. And that's why, we keep talking about it. That's kind of the last piece of the deal that would be like, if you want to talk about valuing, the 20th pick is probably holding up a Kevin Durant deal. Ware is, I think that kind of tells you where the asset management is at from their perspective. So I'd still say Ware's pretty high. And then Duncan's definitely third behind the 20th pick in Ware to me. That's what's crazy. The real question, honestly, from Phoenix's perspective, and I think about this in a lot of teams, is how they value Jovic and Hawkins type players. Because we always just when you know the players and you're watching all their games, all this stuff, it's one thing. But when you're talking about like either a high potential guy in Jovic or an older rookie came into the league a little bit older in Hawkins and seeing what that's going to become, it's just so different when you're talking about it from these other teams' perspectives that take you a swing on it. Because maybe us being high on Jovic and what it become, maybe the other teams around the league don't view it that way. Like maybe they're not seeing it because they're not around him every day. They don't see the stuff behind the scenes and all that stuff. So maybe a guy like Jovic isn't as high on the asset pool, but he's still a sweetener. And I do have to mention, I would think Wiggins would be decently high on this list as well. I would think he'd be right around Duncan's range because of the stuff that you mentioned about Phoenix wanting to compete. They want a player that can fit in. And Wiggins is a guy that could play next to Booker, can win them some games, obviously down, in the mix and just kind of trying to compete at some level. But if I'm Phoenix, that's not moving the needle for me. That's a player you throw in the deal, and that's like the guy that you kind of sell over as the main piece putting next to Booker, but it's not the sweetener that a lot of these other, assets are.
Well, I think it's diminished a lot by how Wiggins performed in the playoffs. I think it's hard. A lot of these things, when you're trading a star player, a lot of it is how you sell it to your fans. Like, what is the piece we're getting back? And I think that's why the Ware part of this matters, because if you're bringing this back to your fans, and I follow a lot of Suns fans on Twitter, and a lot of them are like, the packages and we end up getting is going to be awful. And I think it's possible that it could be awful in relative terms, because they were offered Jimmy Butler at the deadline. Like, we can talk about Jimmy, but they, if they wanted to remain competitive, they could have had Jimmy with Booker and seen where that goes. And, they decided not to do that. The Heat offered a first-round pick along with that too, as well as young players. So I feel like, no matter what Phoenix gets, it may pale compared to what they could have gotten. We'll see. I've been wrong about that before. Sometimes the team swoops in. I don't think Portland did very well in the Dame deal overall. They would have done better if they'd opened up negotiations in a real way with the Heat. And then even if they didn't trade him to the Heat, I think they would have gotten another team to give them more if they actually viewed the Heat as a legitimate suitor, but Portland never allowed it to be that. We talk about the Luka trade. I mean, whatever you think of AD, and he may command first-round picks on his own if he was traded, but I mean, obviously they didn't get for Luka what they could have gotten for Luka if Nico Harrison had actually talked to every team around the league instead of just talking to his friend Rob Pelinka with the Lakers. Now the Lakers have been sold for billions, $10 billion or something along those lines. It looks a little fishy. It's like kind of like, okay, well, they got Luka and they were able to get off that deal, or bring Luka in and get and sell the team. But I guess where I'm at with it is I don't think Wiggins is, at best, he's a neutral asset for Phoenix, because I don't even know that he'd finish his contract there. We'll see. I mean, again, he fit well next to Curry for that 1 year, but that year is starting to look more like an anomaly than anything else. So I'm not sure I view that as a real positive one for them. The Duncan thing should matter to them because it'll give them more flexibility going forward, but we, again, don't know what Ishbia really thinks. But if they're I guess when we talk about Jovic and Hawkes, Jovic to me, and I said this in another pod, is kind of a concept still. Like, it's like the potential's in there. Maybe some team can tap into him. I'm not sure I trust Phoenix to tap into it the way that they've handled young players over recent years. But it doesn't look like the Heat have figured out how to tap into it. And so that's where I don't really know how they would value Jovic necessarily. And we'll close with this. I think the shame of the Hawkins situation is if he had simply had a second season that was close to his rookie season, he would be a good fit for a team like Phoenix. Like to get a guy who is capable of scoring, a little bit of an older player coming in, polished in some ways. I feel like that would have helped the Suns, but now it's just the season that he had makes it so hard to really see how any team would really take an interest in him without seeing a bounce back, right?
For sure. I mean, that's kind of the issue here. And like I said earlier, like you would think teams would be more intrigued by the fact that you said like it hasn't been shaped out yet for Jovic, but like that should be the intriguing part of getting an asset. Like that's the whole idea here. You're not really, when you're getting these young players that are not fully developed, like that's the thing that you want to get them in your franchise to kind of build them out in that way. So that should be the intriguing factor. But like I said, it's kind of the way we've like when teams, we see a trade that gets thrown out there and their young asset that gets thrown in the mix. You're like, well, like that doesn't intrigue you, but like
right.
From their perspective, they think that's like a crazy asset. And I just think about it on the flip side to be realistic of like when you're dangling these type of players, like is that really like changing things? And we also have to mention like this isn't exactly like the trades from a few years ago that we've been talking about over and over. Like we're talking about a 37-year-old Kevin Durant that doesn't want to be there anymore. So if you could get any player with that type of potential in Jovic, you would think that would be intriguing. So right. Hawkins is an interesting one though. I will say that because I in some ways, this may sound crazy, but I honestly feel like the public opinion of him, like when I talk about the national exposure of Khalil, like Hawkins' national exposure is higher than Jovic's, even with the Euro stuff and the overseas stuff. That I wonder if maybe we aren't valuing Hawkins as an asset enough. Like I feel like teams have scouted him and they've seen him, and that's clear because of the way that he was defended this year. I think the fans maybe are not as out on him as Heat fans are, because Heat fans watched it game after game, whereas more fans around the country might see another way. I guess the other way to pose this question, and I'll close with this. If the Heat were moving Kevin Durant, let's say he was on the Heat, or let's say it's Jimmy, okay, without some of the issues, right? I mean, would Heat fans be like, oh, we could get a guy like Khalil Ware? Like, let's say it was reverse. Like, let's say Golden State had Khalil Ware. I think Heat fans would probably be asking for Ware, right? Like, that's 100%. What they'd be looking at. I mean, Kuminga, like, you could say, well, they could have been asking for Kuminga, but Kuminga's due this ridiculous extension that he's not worth at this stage, and I don't really think he's a Heat player. And as I say that, there's rumors that they're interested in him, and I haven't had a chance to really fully check those out. But I feel like Ware, like on a rookie contract, if he had shown that in Golden State,
and Heat fans could get that out of a deal for Jimmy, I think they would feel pretty good about that. I mean, as you look at it, what did they get for Jimmy? They got Wiggins, who might be involved in this deal. And they got Davion Mitchell, a former first-round pick, actually drafted higher than Ware, but was kind of had down value as opposed to where he was.
Is that the Hawkes of this deal?
Could
like
be.
When it gets kind of similar. I mean, a down season, finding a good situation where you can maybe get the ball in his hands a little more. Like, you never know. And it's funny. I will say this: when you mentioned like Phoenix, when they're making this trade and they they're not tanking in a way that they want. They still want to try and compete. I mean, didn't Miami just try and do that? Like, when you're comparing it to the Jimmy situation, I mean, as much as I don't think a lot of fans wanted them to do that, they traded for a guy in Wiggins where they wanted to stay afloat and stay in a competitive nature. And we'll see how that ends up working out. But it's kind of similar in that way as Miami.
And they got a first-round pick. So you're talking about Wiggins, a first, and I guess Davion Mitchell. Again, the way they got to was a little convoluted because Kyle Anderson wasn't really supposed to be here, but then they kept him too, and he provided functional minutes for them, and now they have 2 more years left on the deal. But I think we do have to look at it that way and say, okay, for Phoenix, it's what they get, but it's also what they can sell. And I feel like Ware is somebody they could sell to their fans, and just following a lot of Suns fans since the whole Beal thing and everything else that was happening at the deadline. It's like, okay, well, this is a young piece, younger than Booker, obviously, much younger. But we've had trouble filling that spot at center for a long time. Ayton was a bust, as it turned out, and now we've got a guy in Ware to kind of, try to lead us forward in the front court. I can see why that would be attractive to them, but if they were run like a normal organization, the Duncan contract would be one, because being in the second apron is not someplace you want to be, even if you have the money for it, even if you're trying to be big spending owner, it's just not somewhere you want to be. Look at all the problems they've had. Some of his Beal's no trade clause, but it's also they can't aggregate salary because they're in the second apron. Like, there are advantages to getting out from under it. So just a way to look at it as we continue to follow this process. We'll have coverage on this as it goes forward. Thanks to Brady. And thanks to our listeners, of course, and also our sponsors. Cash App, use the code on the floor when you download it. Prize Picks, use the code FIVE. Have a good one, everybody.